So I received an email today from a viewer named Kenneth. And Kenneth didn't write me an email per se. He was so desperate he sang it to me. And his email sang a little something like this.
Hey Jayce, XDA Jayce, I'm loving our coding show. I'm in a tight space, wasting in a rat race, it's such a painful low. How do I find my calling? It's so appalling, how do I really know? If coding is my loading, then I want to get up and really go.
Welcome back, XDA crowd, and yes, I actually did receive such an email, and it was actually heartbreaking. Here's how it actually went in fact. A PhD candidate, count it, doctorate, 8 years or anywhere from 6 to 8 years of university, he studied financial analysis. He discovered then, as he's about to complete his last thesis, that this was really not for him. He actually thought that maybe he wanted to be a software developer. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, my goodness, how does this fool go through 6 to 8 years of a university degree and not realize that financial analysis is not for him? Well, I think it happens to a lot of us in some ways. We're, young, sitting at home with our family and parents, and we take stock of our gifts and talents, and we try and make a responsible choice. And his discussion with his parents went something like, well, I like to be analytical, I sort of like math, and I want a stable income. That came from his dad. And, well, financial analysis, that kind of came up to be a good thing, and he was a smart academic guy. But it took a long time and tens of thousands of dollars of tuition fees to discover that, nope, should have been a developer. So, it has been my mission to ask as many successful developers as possible, when did the penny drop for you? At what point did you say, hey, this coding thing, this is my calling?
I love programming. Yeah, it's so much fun. And I always wanted to learn. When I started Impact Dialing, I thought, well, there needs to be a technical person or technical people, and there needs to be a non-technical person or non-technical people. And I'm not an expert in the technical stuff, and I want to learn it. But if I learn it, then I'm going to have to find somebody to do the non-technical stuff, which turned out to not quite be right, actually, in hindsight. Because when you're starting a software company, probably a good 75 to 80% of what you're doing is writing software. So I was actually wrong on that in hindsight. But at the time, that was my logic. Yeah, but I was always just kind of interested in it. And when I started, I would just play around with some things and try out some Ruby and some JavaScript here and there. And it was fun and it's challenging. And then the more that I got into it and the more that I learned it and the more that I got the really meaty problems, I just loved it. It's this, you just have this, it's just fun to solve the problems, and at the beginning it's simple problems, like how to translate something into Pig Latin, how to come up with a formula where you can take any number as an integer and then write it out as a string of English words. And it's things that we do every day, but it's like really thinking carefully and critically and logically about them and trying to come up with a way of doing it. And I've always loved math, and I almost don't even want to say that because I think there's a perception that you have to be good at math to be good at programming, and that's absolutely not true. And I think that a lot of people are good at math, but they've been taught really badly, and so they think that they're bad at math. But that's a completely different conversation. But in any case, I am somebody who loves math, and just the way of being able to think through things really logically and come up with a way to model your world with computer code that forces you to understand every little piece of how something works. It was a lot of fun for me. And then when I finally got to the point where I could build web applications and I could work on, this company, Impact Dialing, I had this idea and I started this company, and this software is really my baby. And I got to the point where I could change the code and I could clean it up and I could write new features and I could improve things in it. And that was, it's just a feeling that's unlike anything else, to be able to build something out of nothing.
And I kind of had some thinking time where I was looking at what's my next job going to be. And I poked around at a few different things, but I found that I was really interested in some of the technical job postings. And I simply couldn't apply to them because I didn't have the raw skills. And I thought, God, this is something I was doing when I was 10 years old. I wasn't good at it, and I didn't really learn very much, but I was tinkering with it, tinkering with computers and playing with technology of all sorts since I was 10 years old. Maybe now is my key moment to leap in and do something official with this and make this into a career.
For me, I mean, it's the same reason that kids love Legos or adults love, anyone loves Legos, really. I mean, you're sort of exercising, you're making manifest your sort of imagination, right? You're sort of like the wizards of our time. You think, wouldn't it be cool if I could have, this site that did this thing, and you can sit down and build it. Or another pretty cool application is you have some frustrating menial process. You're trying to scrape a whole bunch of information and you copy paste. Well, all of a sudden you have this like magical skill that you can automate those sorts of processes, and you can do it for other people as well. I mean, you could take. I remember taking a text document and somebody wanted just entries from this sort of listing that contained a particular phrase, and I was able to do it in a few lines of code, and they just looked at me like I was this, magical being, right? So it's a combination of those things, mostly, but it's also it's mostly about a state of play. It's creating things. The same reason that people solve Rubik's cubes. Or do Sudoku. You have a tough little problem, and your brain loves to kind of crank away on it. It's sort of exciting. It's the same state of flow that athletes have. I think you're competing in a way in this sort of post-conscious. I don't know if that's even right, but in this higher plane.
Yep.
You're operating. You're seeing these sort of systems of interconnected pieces in your. You're sort of playing with how they fit together and things like that.
Okay, so what makes me light up when it comes to software development? I think there's a couple of things. There's two main things. So when I was young, I loved math. I mean, I loved lots of different things. I loved physics, I loved chemistry, but I loved math and getting a problem, a complicated problem and spending 15 minutes trying to creatively come up with the solution and then solving it. When you solve those problems and you get the right answer, it's a great feeling. And with computer programming, you're faced with those types of challenges like all the time. And when you solve those problems, it's a great feeling. You get that great feeling of, oh, this is awesome. So that's one thing that makes me light up. The other thing is when you create something which you hope will be useful, and then you have people use it and give you feedback like, wow, that was amazing, I learned so much, thank you so much. Or in the case of the cricket scoring software I created at high school, when I chucked it on the net as a free download, when you start seeing emails from people coming in, with requests for little changes, but also thanking you for all this great piece of software. I mean, that's a great feeling, knowing that you've created something that other people have found useful and has helped other people.
Hey Jayce, XDA Jayce, I'm loving our coding show. I'm in a tight space, wasting in a rat race, it's such a pain from now. How do I find my calling? It's so appalling. How do I really